Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, may the peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah be with you all. I hope everyone who is joining us today is staying safe, that you're healthy. Know that and I think I speak for everyone on this panel, that our prayers and our du'as during this holy month of Ramadan are with you. In the case that you or your family or anyone else in your social network is facing the challenges of this really extraordinary and horrific virus. With that said, I think I want to open up the conversation by lifting the life of Brother Akbar Shabazz, who was the first Muslim chaplain employed by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and who passed away because of the coronavirus last week. May Allah grant him the highest seat in Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. So, we are meeting today in a really extraordinary moment, a moment that is marked by inequality and mass incarceration and white supremacy, all of which then got exacerbated by the reality of this pandemic that we're living in today. And what we're hoping to do today is to have a really honest conversation about the reality of the world that we're in. And also, I think more importantly, really to commune as a collective and as a community in the midst of tragedy, to better understand the realities of our incarcerated brothers and sisters and how we can support our brothers and sisters during this time. We've all heard the ridiculous statistics of COVID-19 rates in prisons, jails, and detention centers across the country, where rates are literally doubling, in some instances even tripling within the week. The deaths and I believe the last statistic was that there were about 150 folks that have died behind bars from the beginning of this pandemic, and that thousands upon thousands, I believe the number is 12,000 folks have been infected by the coronavirus. So these are alarming numbers and are likely undercounted. That is also something that I think is worthy of bringing up. And so we're going to be delving into these conversations with a really esteemed panelists today. So allow me to introduce them for a second. By way of an introduction to myself, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Aya Saeed. I am a legal fellow at the Center for Constitutional Rights and also a board member with the Muslim Wellness Foundation, where I help co-organize the Deeply Rooted Emerging Leadership Program. And I'm really joining this conversation as a person who wants to imagine a new world, wants to understand how we can center the principles of justice, equity, and mercy that we've all learned from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our work and in our lives. So I'm going to start by introducing the panelists. I'll start with Dr. Yusuf Salam. In 1989, Dr. Yusuf Salam was just 15 years old when he was tried and convicted in the Central Park jogger case, along with 4 other Black and Latino boys. The exonerated 5 spent between 7 to 13 years behind bars until their sentences were overturned in 2002. Since then, they received a multi-million-dollar settlement from the city of New York for its injustice and were profiled in award-winning films, including the Central Park 5 documentary from Ken Burns, Sarah Burns, and David McMahon, and the award-winning Netflix limited series When They See Us, written and directed by Ava DuVernay. Over the past 2 decades, Dr. Yusuf Salam has become a family man, a father, a poet, an activist, and an inspirational speaker. He continues to share his stories with others to educate the public about the impact of mass incarceration and police brutality. He regularly advocates for criminal justice reform, prison reform, and the abolition of juvenile solitary confinement and capital punishment. Dr. Salam is the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award from President Barack Obama in 2016, an honorary Doctorate of Humanities from Anointed by God Ministries Alliance and Seminary, and a long list of proclamations, and most notably from the New York State Senate and New York City Council. We also have with us here Atra Flemings. Atra recently joined CARE LA as the Los Angeles community organizer. She's leading CARE's census work and developing partnership with community-based organizations in the LA area. After moving to LA in 1996, Atra's life was turned upside down when her only child, a son, was wrongly convicted of murder and given 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. SubhanAllah. The family immediately filed an appeal. He was later exonerated after 19 years and was released in 2016. In 2018, she became an active member of Muslim ARC. As an American Muslim Anti-Racism Leadership Fellow, she is part of Muslim ARC's 3-person team accepted into the next generation of leaders of color inland region 2019 to 2020 cohort, which is organized by Compass Point Nonprofit Services. She was accepted into Community Coalition's organizing fellowship last year, and her work continues now with CARE LA, SC Justice, Muslim ARC, and Community Coalition, which builds upon decades of her personal advocacy to empower and advance the lives of Black and Brown people in her community. She also teaches how to make soap, bath bombs, lotions, and body butters in her spare time. We all need the self-care. Thank you, sis. And she considers her hobbies as cathartic. Last but surely not least, we have with us Jimmy Gardner, who grew up in Tampa, Florida, where he developed a great love for sports as a child. He was drafted by the Chicago Cubs just after high school graduation and played with them in the minor leagues for 4 seasons. In 1989, while still working towards his business degree, Jimmy was arrested and charged with 2 separate counts of robbery and sexual assault, as well as burglary and assault during the commission of a felony. He did not commit the crimes and always maintained his innocence. However, he was put in jail in January of 1990. Jimmy was found guilty a month later in February of 1990 and was sentenced to 110 years in prison. Since his release, however, Jimmy has become an advocate for other wrongfully imprisoned men and women who have felt the sting of this country's systematic and racial injustices through the criminal justice system. He's also advocated for prison reform and inmate rights all over the country. He's an active motivational speaker engaged by high schools, colleges, and universities, including Georgetown School of Law, churches, and communities and civic organizations throughout this country. He has spoken in prisons such as Lee County State Prison and Autry State Prison in Georgia in his efforts to expose the ongoing injustices and bring about prison reform for inmates. Jimmy offers prisoners hope through specific insight and encouragement as only he can, given all that he has endured. Since his release, he has hit the ground running, and he looks forward to completely embracing his new life. And really quickly, can you actually, Jimmy, let us know when you were released? I don't have that here in the bio.
Yeah, I was released April 1st, 2016, and I had all charges dismissed with prejudice September 7th, 2016, after the state decided to retry me. But all charges dismissed on September 7th, 2016.
Wonderful. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for adding that. So without further ado, I know there are a lot of people here today with us and want to hear from you all. So I'm going to start the conversation. And I think the way I want to sort of start the conversation is acknowledging that there are missing stories and narratives in this virtual space. Even though we all possess a rich cross-section of experiences, I do want to invite you all to share the names of people or of communities that you want to invoke, that you want to just bring into this space with you. And feel free to just, answer or share the names as you wish. There's no particular order to this question.
I'm thinking about the folks who weren't able to still be with us, not necessarily because of the COVID-19, but also because
Sorry, really quickly, Dr. Salam, it's hard to hear you. Can you just
somebody else could take.
Yeah, I can continue until he gets. I can speak on what's happening with COVID-19 with institutions here in Georgia. We have some major outbreaks at a couple of institutions, and I'm not necessarily sure about what the protocols are, and I always just try to get all family members to call call the warden, call the governor, call the commissioner of corrections, and inquire about your loved ones. You know, some states have protocols, some states don't. Some states are locked down within the institution, some are not. I came out of West Virginia, and I'm in close contact with a lot of guys in West Virginia, and they're not locked down. You know, I go on the I'll get out visits, and I speak with guys almost every day, and I just ask them to just take care of themselves. But being in close proximities, as most institutions are throughout the country, individuals just have to take extra precautions. And I know at the institutions that I talk to, my guys are David Rabb, Shug. I talk to a number of guys in federal institutions also in Florida, John Collins. They're telling me that they have masks. They've been presented with masks, but they're individuals within their institutions that have tested positive for COVID-19, and those individuals are in an isolation type situation. Mm-hmm. However, you know, as far as supplies and them needing a lot of, I guess, bleach and sanitizers and things of that nature, they are short. They're coming up short on that end. Mm-hmm. And I've also done an interview on Mr. Rudolph Sutton. He's the first prisoner in the state of Pennsylvania that passed away from COVID-19. And Mr. Sutton had done 30 years, and he was in preparations of getting his case overturned and getting himself exonerated. And his son, I talked to his son, Mr. Rudolph Sutton, and Rudolfo Sutton, and he told me, you know, the prosecutor and individuals called him 3 days after his dad passed with information that they were going to get him out of prison. And he said, well, my father passed 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. And it was just so heartbreaking to me. You know, I served 27 years, and I know individuals. When I was right there at the tip of getting ready to be released, you know, anxiety. I was so getting ready to go, and I made it home, but Mr. Rudolph Sutton didn't make it home. Mm-hmm. And my friend Mr. John Moss, he done 40 years, and I came home working on his case, and he was also a part of an investigation in West Virginia where the forensic scientist, the DNA expert, testified falsely and manipulated evidence in his case as well as my case. And he just didn't get the relief that I got. But we were working on his case and trying to bring him home. He's from Cleveland, Ohio, and that's Mr. John Moss III, and he passed away January of this year. Very, very difficult to deal with. You know, as a friend that I spent the entire 27 years of my incarceration with. He's like a brother. He was a brother. And his family just didn't get to see him come home alive, you know. But it's cases where individuals are right at the cusp of coming home, and anxiety, along with anxiety now is COVID-19, even more anxiety. So we just, as us out here in this society, we just need to really reach back and talk to the commissioners of corrections. We need to reach back and talk to the governors of every state, find out what protocols have been set, and try to do our best to just be active and be a part of a process to try to get these individuals relief. And me personally, I think individuals need to be in a position to not be so closed in close proximities. I mean, there have to be measures made where individuals can actually get an opportunity to have the space that's needed.
So we're going to talk about the conditions in a second. Okay. But before we get to that, I just want to invite Dr. Yusuf Salam and Sister Atra to just share with us if there are any folks that they want to bring into this conversation.
Yes, one of the persons that I definitely wanted to bring in the conversation was my cousin Betty. She is a organizing fellow with SC Justice, and she was formerly incarcerated at CIW, which is in Chino Hills, California, for 27 years, and she's just been out 3 years. She is in constant contact with the women that are incarcerated, and because women that are incarcerated are kind of invisible. We're not really talking about their issues and their concerns that are going on in the prisons. One of the women that she had housed with in the women's prison is someone who's cleaning daily the ambulance, the waiting rooms where women are being seen medically. She hasn't been tested for COVID-19, but her cellie, who hasn't been anywhere, has COVID-19. So they remove her out. They leave everyone else in there. And everyone has been in contact with that one person, so they just shut it down. So if the COVID-19 is there, that's their protocol. They're not getting them tested. I think out of 50, almost 1,600, only 7 have been tested and have been tested positive. So this is what we're looking at with the women prisons here in Southern California. We're not talking about it, we're not dealing with it, but there are a couple of organizations that are, and I always want to lift them up because they keep it going. But I really want, I guess these women abolitionists that have been in prison, they really know more about what's going on among themselves, and they're not being released. In Los Angeles, our county jail released over 3,500 folks that were, waiting for bail. But again, once we're releasing them, we don't always have exit strategies. So when they come home, they're coming home with monitors. And when they come home with the monitors, they're having to stay home, the ones that get to stay home, but the monitors cost. And they don't have money, which is why they were in jail in the first place. So these are some of the conditions that we're dealing with.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Dr. Yusuf Salam, I'm just going to open it up to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is, one of the things that, one of the persons rather that comes to mind just during my journeys and my travels is a person that never came home from prison as well. We used to call him Sheikh Noah. And I mentioned him because when I got to the adult facility, they sent me to Clinton, Dannemora, and that's a maximum age security facility in New York State. When I got there, I bumped into 2 guys who took me over to some other people. And in my mind, I'm thinking that I'm about to get assaulted, but they were taking me to a place of protection. They introduced me to a young man who they said to him, "We found him." And I'm looking and I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? Because you got to remember, I was in there for one of the most heinous crimes that you could be in prison for. Being accused of rape is one thing, but the only thing that is worse than that is child molestation, and inmates have their own way of dealing with that kind of atrocity. And when the guy turned around and he extended his hand to me, and he said to me, "We are members of the Black Panther Party. We are members of the Black Liberation Army, and we are Muslims. You are safe here." And I said, "Man," he said, "you are a political prisoner." And I was so shocked because I never heard that. I never had been acclimated to that until that particular point in time. And it was such a godsend and a great feeling to be received in that way in a place where people were getting murdered, and he never made it home. Sheikh Noah never made it home. And I always think about him because, he was a very brilliant man. And, you think about all of the atrocities that happened throughout our most recent history, and people who were members of the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, people who were fighting for freedom, justice, and equality. You got folks like Mumia Abu Jamal, who's still in prison, who's fighting to get out. You got our brother, H. Rap Brown, Jamil Alameen, who's still in prison trying to get out. Overwhelming evidence that is showing that these folks didn't do these crimes, And I just want to kind of echo them, the people whose stories have never been told, the people who are still languishing in prison, and also the people who have come home from prison, who have been released as of the truth in that they hadn't done it also has been there, that they have DNA evidence backing that they didn't do it, but their stories haven't been held up in the light that they should be. And so a lot of people still have this kind of this heartache that they haven't been, psychosocially, they haven't been replaced in society and been told, hey, you matter. They matter to us.
Right.
But to society, it's like, oh, those guys, those people over there. And we got to never forget the women. There are huge numbers of women who have been in prison for crimes that they have not committed, who have come home from prison from crimes that they have not committed. I mean, my brother Jimmy and I, we got a good friend, Tyra Patterson. You know, she did 23 plus years, you know, and those stories haven't been told either. Those are the few folks that I'm always constantly thinking about, that are always in my heart and always need to be lifted up.
Thank you. I'll just add one quick thing, which is that I also want to bring folks in who did make a mistake at some point in their life, and I think you are also worthy of redemption and
Yes.
and mercy in this moment. And thank you all for sharing all the stories that you shared. I do want to also contextualize this moment. I mean, it's occurring, we're having this conversation during the holy month of Ramadan, subhanAllah. There's significance in us meeting in this moment. I want to thank you all and even the participants who are joining us today. I mean, there is significance. It's a special time. I know that time is very, very important while you're fasting. How one is spending their time while they're fasting is very, very important. So it's really an honor and a privilege for you all to have decided to utilize your time while fasting to have this conversation. I'll ask you, Brother Jimmy, and you, Brother Dr. Yusuf Salam, if you could talk to us a bit about your source of solace during the month of Ramadan while you were incarcerated. What did you lean on? Who did you lean on? And what helped you sort of stay afloat and grounded in the faith?
Go ahead, Yusuf.
I was just going to defer to you, brother. I would say, I think one of the, what helped me tremendously was finding purpose in the pain. Finding that I wasn't going through this, but rather I was growing through this. And I think that the wordplay and the shift had just been so tremendous for me to kind of put things into perspective, to be able to constantly see that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, that I was going towards a goal, and that after that goal, the period still had not been placed on the end of our sentences. And I think that that's the great thing. So being Muslim helped me to find that this was a part of the trial that was proving my faith. I was overwhelmingly happy because I was so young at the time. But when I realized that I was so young and they tried to do something that was so evil, I mean, if you think about it, here you are 14, 15, 16 years old, and you're being accused of a crime that you didn't commit. You don't even have the opportunity yet to dream yet. And so all of the hopes and aspirations that you could have thought about has been replaced with fight or flight. And then when you come out of that, most of the times we don't, you know, Brother Jimmy, you put this on your social media, and I echo this all the time. Thank God I don't look like what I've been through. Because I think that's such a truth that you would expect that we would be jacked up, messed up, you know, tore down, wearing all of our hurt and our pain on our faces and on our sleeves. But we come out and we have smiles on our faces. And I think that that is a true testament to Islam. That is a true testament to, like, I didn't have my mother there being able to tuck me in at night and give me milk and cookies. I had to hold on to the rope of Allah and to read that in the Quran, to read, you know, like not only just hold on, I had to hold on with my molars, you know, and it was so tremendous to find that, to be able to read throughout human history that everyone has been tried, everyone has been tested. Do you think that you'll be left alone on saying you believe without being tried and tested? And this was my trial. I remember sitting down and speaking with Mike Wallace. And Mike Wallace asked me years ago, he said, why do you think this happened to you? You know? And I said, this is a trial by Allah. He said, so you mean that, you know, this was like God's plan for you? And I kind of like later on in life, I kind of chuckled and said to myself, man, you know, of course, Drake had the song God's Plan, but imagine, like, the hand of God is in everything. And once you plug into that reality, everything else is easy. The only thing that we have to do is maintain our connection, being able to hold on to that rope. That's what gives us comfort. That's what makes it easy.
Alhamdulillah. I want to piggyback on that and echo that I found solace in discipline and being structured in Islam. I became a Muslim in 1994, and I went through a sense of regaining order and staying in a order and structured pace, offering prayers throughout the day at the required times, keeping myself focused and busy, time for prayer, time for legal work, working in the law library, time for going to school, earning degrees, time for working out physically, time for getting your rest, not only getting your rest, but eating right, cutting out certain foods, staying on a diet for 23 years, maintaining my health and keeping my entire foundation just structured, and doing that every day, it gave me so much solace. I mean, to wake up another day, alhamdulillah, and understand that you have the opportunity to give praise to Allah first and foremost, that and begin your day, and then go off healthily into your events and what you're doing that day. And every time I move with purpose. And guys used to tell me, man, you always walking fast, man. You walking fast. I said, cause I'm going somewhere. I'm walking with purpose. And I give all praise to Allah, because I never doubted that I would come home. And 27 calendars went by. And by the grace of Allah, I made it home. And I stayed steadfast in prayer. Alhamdulillah, this is my 26th Ramadan. And it's just a blessing to be here. But the structure and the foundation kept me at peace and kept me just humble. And I'm just so thankful and happy to still be in that same mode, walking on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. And it's a blessing. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you both for sharing your reflections. And I hope folks can reap benefits from what you all shared during this holy month. Let's delve into the COVID-19 crisis. We sort of already talked about some of these things, but we've heard about the alarming infection and death rates. We've, especially in prisons, jails, and detention centers. But you all probably have a better sense and a better understanding. Why is it that that's happening? What is explaining that? And how is it that the prison industrial complex exacerbates the impact of COVID-19? It's a big question. I know.
You're talking about a 6x9 cell.
Yeah.
You're talking about a space where, when I was leaving to come home from Clinton Dannemora, the very first cell on a tier of about 50 cells, which was also 4 floors. So you're talking about four stories, 50 cells. The very first cell was just beginning to be bunk beds, where inmates were confined in that 6x9 space by themselves for years prior to that. You then had this great experiment, of course, where, hey, I wonder how many can we pack in? And they started, and I'm sure now all the cells have at least 2 inmates per cell. And then you got places like Rikers Island and some other jails and things of that nature where it's like a big open floor style, but all you see is bunk beds. There is no way to social distance. There is no way to quarantine yourself if you get sick. You know, the old timers, those brothers from the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army, they used to say, man, sometimes you just got to eat an onion. I was like,
Oh, man.
Sometimes you just got to boil some garlic and drink it. What? Sometimes you got to chop up a clove of garlic, some honey on it, and you know what I'm saying? Because you're so scared to go even to seek medical attention, because
Yes.
we are the ones oftentimes that they may experiment on, you know? And so,
Yes.
I mean, it's you're talking about close quarters. You're talking about a petri dish of sort, just waiting to happen. And one of the things that I gotta really, with the sister Atra, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. What she said, which is important, is even when they let some of us go, after they put us in the petri dish, and they send us back out into our communities, think about what's happening. They're putting people who might not even know that they are infected in a space where other people are confined because of the projects that we lived in, or the tenements that we lived in, or any number of those spaces. Not everybody has a house that they can go into another room or go into their own backyard, or we live together. And so the epicenters of the world, I would say, I was going to say United States, but the epicenters of the world, those cities, those places where you have the largest populations of people, this is why things like that happen. And I think the prison industrial complex, I was just, it was nerve-wracking, because I'm thinking about all of those brothers and sisters who can't leave, who don't have the opportunity to say, you know what, I got a little cough. I'm gonna just hang out in my cell for 2 weeks because social distancing is what that requires. You don't have that opportunity.
No. Yeah, it's difficult. And just to add a little more to that, it's individuals in cells throughout the country that have 8 men in them. I went to an institution that had
Wow.
8 men per cell, and you have 1 toilet and 1 sink. And this was a maximum security institution in West Virginia. And there's no way you can keep social distancing. There's no way to keep it. And like I stated earlier, being able to have hand sanitizer and different types of bleaches, and just keep that stuff is at a minimal count. They don't have excess of these type of supplies. I talked to a few of my guys inside. They have face masks that the institution has given the guys, so they wear their face masks. And I asked if they have gloves, and the guy was like, well, no, we wear the gloves we wear in the wintertime. I said, okay, so just take care of yourself the best you can, because they're not locked down. I find it amazing.
And this is a forgotten community too. This is a community, and I don't want to just say forgotten like we forgot about them. I'm talking about forgotten in a way where we do not care. The system has a lock them up, throw away the key mentality.
Exactly.
And as a result of that, what we see is all kinds of come on, you got it. What you see is, that's baby Yusuf.
Yes.
You see this the response where, I mean, I've seen videos of inmates in prison videotaping what's going on.
Yes.
I mean, you got some prisons in Mississippi that you're talking about mold and people were dying and nobody's taking these bodies out. They're there, right there. I mean, imagine what that means. Imagine being in a space where mold is actively growing and you can't even remove yourself. Imagine inmates being in a place where there's supposed to be some sort of supervision. I mean, X amount of guards to X amount of inmates, or 1 guard to 10, or I don't even remember what the ratio is, but a lot of these officers weren't going to work because the stress of being an officer going to prison this is something that folks don't understand as well. Officers oftentimes would say to me, I'm in prison too. I just get to go home at night. And so the level of stress that they are under in that space is so tremendous that some of them have said, you know what, and so the prisons become understaffed. Now who's going to let the inmates out? Now how is the jail going to run? Now that forgotten community, when you think about it, the lock them up, throw away the key, now they just say, well, to hell with them. They shouldn't have did the crime anyway. Right? And not everybody's in jail who should be there. And there's many people who may have made a mistake that learned from their mistake. And because prisons are so punitive now, it used to be the criminal justice system. Now it's the criminal system of injustice. There's such a punitive nature where they're going to give you 5 life sentences plus 10 years. I mean, the sentencing projects, all of these things that we look at, the Innocence Project, the Marshall Project, all of these organizations that are attacking this problem and doing the best that they can, are finding a system that is not broken.
I want to invite Sister Atra to add in, because I remember earlier you were talking about not testing folks, releasing folks who may still be sick. Just wanted to see if you wanted to add anything to this.
Well, I'm going to step back and go to Ramadan, where you all started with the brothers, because I'm a mother and I did 19 years in prison too. I did 19 years of Ramadan with my son in prison. When a loved one goes to prison, it impacts the whole family. And when a mother's son is in prison, whatever that son is feeling, that mother is feeling more. So everything that Brother Jimmy and Brother Yusuf are explaining to you, if they had their mother, that was their source that they went to. That woman is the woman who carried a lot of what they were going through. I know I could carry that for my son, and even for some of the other brothers in prison who didn't have mothers that were Muslims, you know. Alhamdulillah, you know, I was a Muslim and my son was a Muslim, and going through prison and having to let him become a man, the only thing I could give him was the Quran. I'm like, read Surah Yusuf, read this surah, you know, not knowing exactly what to say, until he got to the point where he could recite the Quran in Arabic himself, until he could understand what Allah was saying to him personally, you know. And I remember over that 19 years, I would go to Africa, I would meet with Malams, I would do prayers, and I would come back and I would say, they said you're released. And he said, Allah still has something for me here. There's something I still haven't gotten. I still haven't gotten, Mom. And then we would go 2 more years. It's another Ramadan. This time he's in solitary confinement. He's like, wow, Mom, Allah talked to me personally. I was so happy I was on lockdown and, you know, in the hole, so I could just be with Allah. And when a mother hears her son holding on to the rope of Allah like that, that's where we get the strength to continue the fight. That's where we get the strength to become activists, you know? And I'm still in it, because I said when he came out, it doesn't end with you coming home. We have to go back like Harriet, and we have to go back and get others, brothers, sisters, you know. And then with all of that, we had my son had, his son was born. He was 9, my grandson was 19 when my son came out. My son had been in prison 19 years. So alhamdulillah, through that 19 years, I have this grandson that I was really kind of upset that he had got a girl pregnant out of wedlock. But it was that grandson that gave me the motivation over those years, who came in with me. And then prison impacts the children too. So when we're talking about COVID-19 and the brothers are calling home to their mothers, to their sisters, to their wives, the whole family feels it. Everybody is worried about what is happening inside all of us. I'm gonna leave it there and let the brothers pick it up some more.
I say
No, no.
you are so on point with that,
Agree.
because oftentimes the families are in a worse prison than we are, because we know what's going on inside the walls. But the worst, our worst imagination, meaning our mothers and fathers and loved ones, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, their worst imagination is imagining what is going on with us in there. You know, when we were in Cali watching, getting prepared for the for When They See Us, we were sitting down with Ava DuVernay, and I remember we watched part one. It broke us down and built us up. Part two, same thing, broke us down and built us up. And it was all of that trauma that we had thrown behind us, that we had never dealt with, that was coming out in that room, in that space. And we were able to commune with one another and share with one another and build back up with one another as people who had gone through this shared experience. And then we got to part four, and it was different. It was something different about part four before we even saw it. Ava pulls me aside and she says, Yusuf, this is the TV version. And I want folks to understand that what the world has seen when they saw When They See Us, especially part four as it relates to Corey Wise, my friend's story, was only the TV version. She couldn't go all the way in. But that part four destroyed us. And so oftentimes our loved ones are in the worst prison that we're in. Oftentimes that ability to want to just do something, you know, the fact that we have Muslim parents who can come into the prison and see us and share with us our experience that we're going through, our experience that we're growing through as we're becoming Muslim. Sometimes people just became Muslim, meaning like you may have been in a Muslim family, but sometimes you just became Muslim by accepting Islam at that point in time. And once you step into that mold, something beautiful happens, especially when you're in there. That's a training ground. That's a place where you can gear up, you know? I was looking at a friend's post the other day, my good friend Abdul Haq. He said, when he first became Muslim, and it was Ramadan, they said Ramadan builds Muslims and makes them stronger. You know, especially if you in there and you in there doing time. And on top of that, you have to pray. On top of that, you have to fast. On top of that, you find community. You become so strong. They say Islam is one of the strongest things in prison, you know? And it's such a beautiful thing, because what they don't know is that it's a blessing in disguise once you find your purpose through the pain.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Sister Atra, for showing us that a moment of reckoning was needed, intervening. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I want to ask a question that is a bit, I think there are a lot of ways to answer this question, but I'll just put it out there and see how it lands for you all, which is that I think there's no surprise that COVID is disproportionately impacting Black and Muslims, Black people and Muslims, and both jointly together. And also that mass incarceration is impacting our community of Black Muslims. Can you speak on the sort of factors that are at play that lead to the disproportionate impact of both? Do you think that the same driving factors are at play? Do you think there's a correlation that is very intentional? And if so, can you speak on it?
Talking about, I mean, first thing that pops up in my mind is how in places like the Bronx, you know, I come from New York City, so I got to echo New York, of course, there's a huge amount of young people who have asthma. And I don't even want to touch on the health issues. Like first, I want to talk about these places that we find ourselves in, right? I was thinking about crime the other day, and I thought about how you couldn't really describe and talk about crime without talking about things like the new Jim Crow, without talking about things like redlining, without talking about things like the creation of projects or the creation of experiments. And I say all of that because when you have places like projects, like it's funny because everybody has projects all throughout the United States, but the projects in New York City are like, this is some next level stuff. I mean, you got the pink houses, you got King Towers, you got, you got Taft, you got all these projects. And when you step back and understand that the word project is almost like a code word for experiment, that in these places, I was looking at this documentary and they were talking about how even through the early part of COVID-19, and it probably changed a bit, they weren't even putting notices up that were completely explaining the reality that these folks had been put in by telling them you got sometimes like in my mother's building, it's 35 floors. You got apartments A through H. It's 3 elevators. People have to go up and imagine one elevator gets broken down. Imagine 2 elevators get broke down. And this happens all the time in projects. And so you have that, and then you have things like asthma just popping up. How are people getting asthma just like at a rapid rate? And then we can talk about the other stuff like the health issues, because of course in the Black and brown community, you got things like the fast foods. You got we don't even know when they change the oil in the fast food places. There's a certain New Yorkers may call it a je ne sais quoi to the food, the taste of the Chinese food that you just can't find in any other place in America. But it's because of the filth that's in this stuff. And then you think about it, here we are trying to live life, trying to live the American dream, but we've been put on the bottom rung of the ladder on purpose. Someone designed us to be there. And you think about all of the access to healthcare, the access to wellness, the access to anything, few and far in between.
I want to piggyback on that also. I'm here in Albany, Georgia, and we have an extraordinary amount of COVID-19 cases here. In fact, we're one of the hot spots in the world, and there's a lot of factors involved to why this is a hot spot. First off, this is a predominantly Black community. I believe it's like 70-something% African American here. And you have a lot of individuals that are impoverished. And like you say, their eating habits, we don't have proper eating habits, and you have different hypertension. A lot of people have diabetes. There's a lot of different chronic illnesses that we as a people have. And this COVID-19 will attack that. You won't be able to regenerate and rebuild, and it'll take you out. And we're seeing that in large numbers here. And I want to revert back to the time when I was inside. You mentioned eating onions. And I tell people, I caught the flu in 1990. And I speak about it because until that time, I had never eaten onions before. But I ate onions in 1990 after having the flu. And I just continued to eat onions afterwards because it took the flu away from me. And when I told you I changed my diet, and throughout the years, I never got that flu again. I never got a cold again. I never had a headache. And they told me in 1993, Mr. Gardner, you have hypertension. And this is the period of time when I was on lockup. I went to lockup when I first went to the institution, and I did 2 years in solitary confinement. And I had rage. I had serious rage because I was mad about being convicted and incarcerated, sentenced to 110 years for something I didn't do. So I was mad. And whoever got in my way, it was going to get it. And that was my mindset. And I went to lockup. I got sentenced to that 2 years of lockup in punitive segregation. And I had to really hone in on who I was. Because over here, you got Aryan Brotherhood. You have the KKK, skinhead. It's a predominant, it's 90-something, 98% white in the state of West Virginia. Then I'm coming out of Tampa, Florida, going into West Virginia. And this was being just thrust upon me. And I was like, man, I got to fight for my life here. And you got all kind of hits going down every day. This gang versus this gang, people getting killed, numbers of guys getting killed. And it was a rough time. But man, I tell you, Ramadan and going into prayer and fasting, it made me strong. It made me stronger than anything and more than, I was stronger than I've ever been in my life. And I tell you that just staying in my faith and in the Sirata Mustaqim, just keeping in that path, that was so powerful. Prayer, and you hear people say prayer is powerful. Man, I'm a living witness. That prayer is powerful. I would pray and pray. And when I didn't have anything, when I couldn't do anything else, I pray. I pray again. I would watch that ball drop in New York every year. And I'd be on my knees praying, asking God, Lord, let this be the year for me to come home. I watched that ball drop 20-something years. And I had people telling me, why are you fighting to go home? Or counselors and staff members saying, Gardner, you've been saying you're going home every year. And I said, I'm going home. It's going to be my year this year. 27 of those years went by, and I finally made it home. And by the grace of Allah, I was able to take care of myself and eat healthy and be in the right mindset, not lose my mind. So, I'm watching so many guys addicted to pills inside, addicted to medications. They're walking around like zombies. Individuals are not on point and their health is declining drastically. I stayed healthy. I ate those onions, and I tell people about the onions. I came up with all kind of concoctions. I'm mixing all type of herbs and spices and mayonnaise in my hair, putting this on calamine lotion and aloe vera plant on my face. I'm in survival mode. It took dental floss out. I said, I gotta have dental floss. I don't want no radio. I don't want no telephone. I don't want no drugs. I want some dental floss. But they took it out. So I had to get this. I said, I'm taking care of myself. People said, why are you worried about your teeth? What do you mean? I'm worried about my health overall, period. But to be in the position to go through the ordeal and look back down that road today, it is powerful. All praise is due to Allah. And I tell people, if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here just to even have a conversation. Never did I turn and never did I move away. Never did I go astray and say, I'm done. I'm no longer in the Islam. I'm not getting what I want right now. No, became stronger. And me and brothers started Islam in Mount Olive Correctional Complex in 1995. Wow. And there was no Islam in West Virginia. And we endured massive lockup, all type of harassment, all types of ills, not letting us have oils, not letting us have prayer beads. We couldn't get certain Qurans. Certain Qurans were labeled as militant. So we had to go certain books. We couldn't get certain books. One guy would have to get a chapter over here, get a chapter over here, a chapter over there with no name on. I mean, survival.
Wow.
But we, in the end, we got the Quran. We got to participate in Ramadan and participate in the 6-day Shawwal fast afterwards. Nice. And we got the opportunity to have ta'aleems, and pray with each other, go into the chapel and offer our salats. We went through it. Thank God for Ralupa. We filed lawsuits. We got things done. And by the grace of Allah, people say, well, y'all suffered. We went through what we had to go through. People went through stuff before we came. in this world. We are descendants of slaves. We are descendants of some of the greatest and most resilient people to ever walk the face of this earth.
Mhm.
And I always look back to that. I love the ancestors. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I want to just add one thing, which is that, thank you for bringing up this point about perseverance and resilience. But what is really important, and what I want to uplift, is how Black Muslims in prisons and in jails, by continuing to fight and sort of not taking no for an answer, it's really by and large on their back that we have now this sort of body of law that allows for prisoners to get out. A lot of it was developed because of Black Muslims and their perseverance and diligence. So even the use of Verlupa, which is what you're mentioning, is something that really came about because of the work of Black Muslims behind bars. So it's that sort of work and that diligence and that commitment to freedom, I think, that is not only paying its dues to us and our families, but it's also something that's opening up doors for all kinds of prisoners. And I think that's why this conversation is so important, because I think if we really get at the heart of how COVID is impacting our communities and how and what we can do about it, the hope then is that that really unlocks potential for all communities across the world. And that, I think, really is at the heart of the mission and the work that we're trying to do. I do, before I move on to the next question, want to invite Sister Atra, if you do want to answer this question as well.
Well, I'll share with you that last year when I did the fellowship with Community Coalition in South Central, that what we found in just going through maybe a 10-mile radius is the lack of grocery stores. So you have all these corner markets with all of this fake food. So our community, we're not getting real food. And when this virus came, and the health officials, even my own personal doctor, said, are you getting in your fruits and vegetables? Because in our community, we're not getting fruits and vegetables. We went to our grocery stores, all the shelves were empty. The produce was out there available. Nobody was touching the produce. But then when we get back to our community, the other thing that we have to look at, which is why 2020 is so important, our communities don't have access to health care. Every 20 years with this, every 10 years with the census, when people are counted, those numbers are there. It shows where we need to go and put money into building hospitals, clinics, freeways, schools. This is one part of it. The second part of it for 2020, again, is going to be registering to vote. I really believe with COVID-19, I don't want to go into my theories, but what it looks like is that we need to start becoming active participants in what's going on with us. We can't just sit back idly and just talk about our own personal stories when our communities are being impacted. We need to get out there, pick your organization, pick what you want to do, but pick up something and let's get busy. Otherwise, we are all going to end up, if not back in prison, we'll be dead. And we won't be having any conversations. That's why.
So, I'm hearing from you all the sort of call for personal responsibility or call of action, talk of food insecurities, health insecurities, scarcity of health access. And I kind of want to stay on this point for just a second, especially as it pertains to women, I think. So I'm going to go right back to you, Sister Atra. I'm sorry. But I do think that we're surfacing some really key issues here. So a few days ago, I read this really heartwarming story, really horrific story of a Native woman from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. Her name is Andrea Circle Bear, who died while delivering her child behind bars while she was on a ventilator, having just been infected by COVID-19. And I think the health crisis really kind of brings to focus the lack of healthcare access and lack of access to healthcare, especially as it pertains to women, especially as it pertains to Native women, to Black Muslim women. And so I really would love for you to share with us, just from your own work, having worked with closely incarcerated women, what the realities are of healthcare to women who are sort of involved in stuck in the prison industrial complex.
I think I mentioned earlier that there are many cases that are happening in the women's prison right now. And with Andrea Bear, she didn't all of a sudden get on a ventilator. She went in one day, they sent her back. 4 days later, she's back. They sent her back to the prison again. Then maybe on the third day, they say she's tested positive. And at this point, they have to put her on a ventilator and take her baby. They could have helped her. They chose not to help her, and they chose to continue sending her back with COVID-19 to infect other people. That's the reality of that. And again, like I said earlier, women aren't getting the medical attention, and we're not even getting the attention of the media. We will, at least in America, talk about men in prison. We are not talking about women. We're not talking about their issues. We're not talking about women in COVID-19 in prison, women in COVID-19 in jail. It's not a conversation that we're having. So until we can start having that conversation and listening and uplifting some of the stories of those women there, because it's many stories, then maybe we can start to have that conversation. But we haven't been having it. And those organizations like CWWP here in Southern California, they are out there working in the prisons, working with the women. And we just need to support those organizations. If we can't participate and support them, give money, volunteer. That's where I'm at.
Do you think COVID is spreading a bit differently in women's prisons, or how would you describe, I think, the distinct and particular impacts of COVID in detention centers, prisons, and jails for women?
Okay, so again, for women, we have the media that the media is looking at the men's prison, the men's jail. The media is not looking over here where the women are. So it can continue to spread, and we're not looking at the larger numbers because the numbers of women in prison appear smaller. So we're not looking at these smaller cases that are going on over here. We don't have enough people that are advocating for the small groups that are happening over here. We're advocating more for the larger groups. Here in Southern California, we have another group that's called #ZeroIce Transfers. And we're supposed to be a state where immigrants have protection. And to be honest, here in Los Angeles, they haven't had the protections. ICE is continuing to knock on doors, stop people, put them in detention centers, transfer them from detention centers into prisons. And I think maybe last week, ACLU, along with maybe 100 other organizations, filed a lawsuit against ICE, and it's going to be heard with the County Board of Supervisors, but they're also taking it to the governor. But these things aren't, we're fighting for it. We're fighting for change. And even when we win, they still ignore us. So we have to continue to go back and fight, to make the change happen. And again, we need bodies of people. We can't just have a small group of people. You got a couple people out there with their cars and their honking horns, but we need everybody to get involved, however small. It's going to matter.
Right. I want to thank you so much for lifting ICE and immigration detention. I'm representing now a few women actually who are in immigration detention, hoping to get them released because of COVID-19. And I want to sort of lift one particular story of a woman, Nigerian woman, Helen Dada, who is 40 years old, suffers from hypertension and diabetes, and has a 7-year-old daughter who lives in Louisiana, and is sort of waiting really impatiently for her release. I bring her story up to say that, to share that Helen was 2 semesters away from finishing nursing school.
Wow.
And is passionate about being at the front lines of healthcare and health access. And oftentimes in the immigration context, what you find are a lot of the women who are being held in ICE like Helen could have potentially been at the front lines of helping us solve this COVID-19 crisis as nurses. And the irony of women who make up a majority of healthcare providers in the capacity of nurses, and so really are on their backs and on their feet and are giving literally their physical bodies to the struggle of COVID-19, while simultaneously being forgotten and made invisible within the carceral state, I think is something that we really need to be very conscious of. And I really thank Sister Atra for bringing this up, especially because immigrants make up a majority of nurses, or I believe actually the statistic is more so 20% of nurses are immigrants. And so thinking just about the complexities of a lot of these issues, like you said, they're all tied, they're all part of the same, I think, strain of issues that we're dealing with. I sort of want to bring in something that a few of you all have sort of brought up earlier, which is that there are folks now, albeit very small numbers, but there are folks being released because of COVID-19. I want to ask you all, how do we engage folks who have been recently released, and what lessons can we reap from your own experiences in supporting folks who are being released in the wake of COVID-19?
I will say that one of the organizations that I work with, which is SC Justice, we will be hopefully bringing home a Black mother for bailout. And women in the community have, well, one woman in particular, she has donated her home so that this woman can sit there and isolate for 2 weeks. Because people have to come somewhere and isolate. We can't just let people out and they not go somewhere and isolate. I think we're gonna have to look at coming together and seeing what strategies or what programs or what organizations are doing what for exit plans. Because I don't hear enough about those. This is one story about one person. What is the exit strategy for the numbers of people that are coming out? I don't have that answer. I'm waiting to hear it and open to hear any solutions. But again, if you have a couple of people that have property, that they might be willing to let some people come out and, you know, isolate, that would be perfect. Anyway,
I think that's a remarkable idea, honestly. I never thought of that.
Okay.
I know that there are people being released from federal prisons, and like you say, minimal. You know, I encourage individuals to ask for a compassionate release. Those individuals that have done a majority of their time, and those individuals that may have some preconditioned problems, maybe health issues, whatever they are, because those individuals can be considered for relief and release from prison. And those individuals need to know that all you have to do is follow the appeal process. The appeal process begins inside with a grievance to the warden. That's the initiating process. And if that warden takes over 30 days, you can go straight to your United States District Court that you were actually convicted in, or whatever circuit you're in. You can file to the court. But I recommend individuals to not file pro se just to get the process speeded up, but try to get an attorney to come in and file. And most of the times, when you have a federal defender or something that has been on your case, they'll still be in the position to file on your behalf. You file that into the courts, and you'll have a strong opportunity to get out, God willing. But just remember the appellate process. Now I just got a nephew that just came home, and my mother's 75 years old, and you know, she's talking, well, we bringing him home. We're gonna bring him. I said, Mama, you can't do that. He has to stay isolated for a certain period of time, 2 weeks. So what me and my wife did, we just had to make sure that we got him a hotel and got him some food and let him be in an isolated position for 2 weeks. And we got a nice rate with the hotel, and we did that. And I suggest everyone do that. People are coming home, and they're going right at home with their family. You don't know what they may have came across inside, and you don't know what the family may have came across. I mean, it's just a very risky situation, but you have to do your best to keep individuals in isolated situations. Like I said, we did the hotel, and we put that hotel on alert that we wanted to get a room. We're going to make sure we go get his food and bring everything and prepare and ask him and plead with him to stay here. We're dealing with a young man, 25 years old. Stay at this hotel. Don't go around grandma. Don't go around your family right now. And he's steadily saying, well, I don't have anything. I just came out of corrections and everything, but I'm good. I'm good. I said, no, you don't know that. We're not going to take any chance. Being informed and getting individuals to listen to you and not think that they're just healthy because they may not have shown any symptoms. It can be lying dormant. It could be there. So we just got to just continue to just inform and make provisions to try to put our loved ones that's coming home in a safe place, or let them stay in the room if you may for 2 weeks. You know, stay in the garage, set them off so they can be in a position to really get the isolation that they need.
You know, I don't necessarily have any answers, but as I listen to the great answers, I'm thinking about places like New York, and of course you got Rikers Island, and you got, you know, very, very densely populated realities. And part of my conspiracy theory, you know, is they're hoping that as they send us back out, that we infect and kill off a large population of us, you know. And I think that that's something that we have to really consider. Just like you said, Brother Jimmy, you know, as this young man who's 25, who wants to be out here, who wants to be free, who was just confined for whatever time he was confined for, you know, you have to be able to look at the broad scope of things, the longevity of things, and say, oh man, what if I don't know that I have it, like you said, and then I go to grandma, I love grandma, but what if grandma gets something from me?
Right.
Like I may not ever show any symptoms. I may literally I may go through the whole 2 week period and say, man, see, I told you so. But that's not what that's not the case. The case is, and the understanding has to be that you just have to act as if you have it.
Yes.
Because if you are a carrier and don't know it, then you can just transfer it over to someone else and infect them and make things worse. And I think that just for the safety and care of us as a people, we have to be that aware of it all. You know, as we leave, or as we come towards the end of COVID-19, how are we going to show back up in the world? That's the same question that I had of myself when I went into prison at 15 years old. How am I going to come back out? Am I going to come out bitter, or am I going to come out better? And all of this time should be times where, like you said, Brother Jimmy, and everyone else is saying, we got to be thinking about things like that. Like, how is our health going to fare when they're telling us that the essential workers were places like the liquor stores that are in all of the Black and brown communities, the fried chicken spots and all of that. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. I'm just saying that we have to understand, we have to be about the business of making sure we care about ourselves. We take care of this right here so that we can be around tomorrow. You know, we don't want to check ourselves out. but we want to be able to fully participate. My grandmother used to always say, when I would say to her, may God bless you with a long life. And she said, no, you should rather say, may God bless you with life in your years. Because if you are still able to move around and get around as you age, that's the benefit and the blessing. Not to be in a state where you're messed up and you begin to exhibit all of the bad effects of what you did to your own body.
I think there's also a metaphor in what you said for this moment, also in that we also have to ask ourselves how we're going to come out of this moment in history. What are we as humans and as Black Muslims, as Muslims, are we going to be different post the reality and the horror that is COVID-19? And I think now is the time to start building up that new reality, living, preparing, putting in structures, like Brother Jimmy said, to prepare our bodies and our souls for that new world that we want to live in the future. So there's a sort of collective space that we're in now that I think is demanding a lot from us physically and spiritually. So thank you all for sharing those experiences. I know that we are coming up close to time. And I don't want to take up more time from you all. I know your schedules are busy. Brother Jimmy told us this is the third, if not fourth meeting of the day. So I want you to have some rest before iftar time. But, we are convened here today by the Black Muslim COVID Coalition. Special props to Sister Marguerite and Dr. Camila for bringing us here together. And I want to really spend some time lifting the organizations and the organizers that do the work of liberation that you all want us to be aware of. So I'm going to open the floor up to you guys to let us know. I'm sure there are a lot of folks that are asking how they can get involved, what they can do, and to the extent that you can, guide them in any certain direction, I think that would be really appreciated.
I can begin. I just want to briefly track back. I know I didn't get to say this about the individuals, why there's so many, COVID-19 cases here and other communities. They're not testing in the minority communities. They're not testing. We're not getting the test. And that's the number one contributor. We're not getting the test, and people are coming up positive and passing it on. I wanted to say that and put that out there. And that's not just minority communities here in Georgia, all over. It's all over. All throughout the United States, the minority communities are the ones that are suffering because of lack of testing. Just want to say that. But I am Jimmy C. Gardner of JC Gardner Speaks, man, and I'm honored to be here. And I have an organization, the Gardner House Incorporated, where I bring home individuals coming home from prison and give them opportunities to segue back into society and have an outstanding relationship with their families. And that's my Gardner House Incorporated family. I'm with the Georgia Innocence Project here, and we fight. I'm on the board of the Georgia Innocence Project, and we fight to get people home. And we brought 4 or 5 guys home and people home in the last 2.5 months, and it's phenomenal. And being a part of organizations that want to give back and help in our communities. Leadership Georgia, I'm part of. Leadership Albany, Albany Cares. I'm a part of groups that are giving back to Albany, Georgia, and throughout the surrounding counties in Georgia, trying to bring awareness, trying to put people in the right path to start eating healthy. We got Farmer Fredo in his organization. We got people doing gardens, community gardens. And they got foods. We're growing foods in 1 week, vegetables, fruit, all type of greens, all type of different things. We're eating healthy, but we're doing this in the community. And I just want to tell everybody out there, the organizations that I'm a part of, you can support those organizations and do your best to just stay active and be a part of the positive that we're doing in this society. Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Sister Atra, you're muted.
Sorry, we have so much noise behind us. I wanted to say here in Los Angeles, we are offering free testing in our community. So that is happening here. And again, on my last note, I will keep saying to my people, let us get counted. Let
Yes.
us get counted and let us register to vote.
Yes.
And become aware of everything that is on your ballots, every initiative. Know it yourself. Don't trust someone else to tell you about something that is going to impact your own life.
Right.
Get involved and get the information yourself. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, I love that you said about get counted, vote. And I think that folks need to understand this. Non-participation is participation.
Mhm.
I want that to be very, very clear. Folks need to understand that like they know, like they know. I mean, if you do not participate in the process that is there, you have just participated. And so, you know, I want to definitely lift up organizations like the Innocence Project, of which I'm a board member of, the Marshall Project. I've partnered with them to make sure that we bring the focus on what's going on in the criminal justice spaces. Um, my mother has an organization that is doing tremendous work now. She's trying to make sure that people get a fighting chance and families get fighting chances. The name of her organization is Justice for, the number 4, the wrongfully incarcerated, or J4, the number 4, WI.org. And what she's doing now, which is going to be great, we used to walk up to Albany every year from New York, literally walk from New York City to Albany
Wow.
so that we can be, first of all, bring some attention around these types of issues that's going on, but also now because of the COVID-19, we're going to be doing a virtual walk. So we're going to still use the same time frame, but allow folks to be able to come together on a Zoom chat or some type of social media feed to be able to share what's going on and to discuss the issues that are happening all throughout the time as if we were walking up there. We'll be walking up there in spirit and digitally. And I would say, you know, invest heavily in self. And that could mean a few different things. You know, that could mean reading a book, but that could also mean listening to a book. That could mean listening to a book through a program like Audible, or going to the public library and allowing, like getting a hold of their free stuff that they have and listening to it to enrich yourself, because we got to do something for ourselves. We got to be able to say, this is the time to step up and step out. This is the time to grow our wings. This is the time for all of the dreams, hopes, and aspirations that have been replaced. You got to remember, a lot of the the degradation, the sadness, the downtrodden, the self-defeatism happens because oftentimes someone has taken our hopes, dreams, and aspirations and replaced it with despair. And so I want you to always understand, as my good friend Les Brown says, live as full a life as you can, so that when death comes for you, you die empty. I want you to leave it all here. I don't want you to leave this world without a trace. I want you to leave your mark on the world that says that you were here and that you matter and that you are passing the baton on so that the struggle continues and that we lay down a pattern for people to live life in accordance with how Allah wants us to be. Because that's the important part, being a part of that community that calls for the right and forbids the wrong, that lifts people up and shows the way and say, hey, it's not about discounting anybody else's way or anything like that. All we got to do is make sure that if it's in accordance with the Quran, and if it's in accordance with the way that our prophet, peace be upon him, has lived his life and given his example to us, then we will be able to be the best of the people that we can be. Don't shirk that responsibility. It's on us as if it was on no one else, just like it's on everybody else as if it's not on us, but we got to do our part and participate fully.
I want to let Sister Atra add. I think you have, you wanted to add an org or two, perhaps?
Yeah, I forgot to mention CARE, the organization that I work for. It's an amazing organization, you know, CARE California is the Council on American Islamic Relations. We do a lot of work in the community, a lot of work for civil rights for communities all over the United States. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that for all of those that are listening here today, please become members of Muslim ARC. Muslim ARC is responsible for putting together this event, and we need to show our support by becoming members. Let us begin here with our own. Thank you so much. Thank
you. And then Brother Jimmy Gardner, just for folks that may want to learn more about the org, about your foundation, can you just share maybe the website or social media handles so that folks can get in contact?
Yes, you can reach me at www.jcgardnerspeaks. That is my webpage. And JC Gardner Speaks is my LLC. So you can reach me at Facebook, Instagram, all social media at JC Gardner Speaks. That's where I can be reached. And like I said, my Gardner House Incorporated, that is in the makings, and we're trying to finish that up by the end of this year. But we're trying to bring a facet to that that's going to provide opportunities for family to remain strong and just committed when the individual, whether the family member goes in, while he's in, and while he or she's in, and while he or she, when they come out. We want to provide that structure of family that's going to be there all the way within the process, throughout the process.
Great.
Thank you.
And I thank you so much for sharing that. I also, you know, we talked a lot about the structural issues. We talked a lot about the personal issues that this moment sort of brings to bear. I also want to shout out the Muslim Wellness Foundation that does the really, really crucial and hard work of lifting our hearts and shifting our hearts and transforming who we are mentally, psychologically, spiritually. And so I'm gonna ask folks to follow both the Black Muslim COVID Coalition at BMC Coalition, and also the Muslim Wellness Foundation on Twitter and on social media and all that good stuff, so that you all sort of know how to get in contact with the wonderful organizers from this event. Again, please follow at BMC Coalition. Muslim ARC is at Muslim ARC, and Muslim Wellness Foundation is at MWF National. So thank you all for spending your fasting hours with us today. I really, 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 it was an honor and it was a privilege to be a part of this conversation with you all. And inshallah, I hope that folks have gotten some inspiration, some insight from this conversation that is of benefit to them. I do want us to close out this conversation with a dua. I invite perhaps Brother Yusuf Salam to close out the conversation with a dua if possible. You're muted.
Unmuting helps. I was told that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that they always left each other when they are reciting Surah Asr. And so Asr is either in or coming in for some folks, and I want to recite that as well. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Oh Allah, bless us with the very best of this world, the very best of the next, and save us from the fire. Amen. Time. Make sure that you connect either on YouTube to local masjids, national masjids. Make sure you connect on their websites, because this is part of the community as well, being able to share and connect and commune in that particular way.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
With that,
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye.
wa alaikum salam, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ramadan
you for having me.